Listening to Weekends on WCGO. Check out our Facebook live stream, brought to you in part by our exclusive signage partner, Fast Signs of Lincolnwood. Located at 3450 West Devon Avenue, visit them on the web at fastsigns.com/80.
Your talk. This is Your Talk, only on 1590. Your Talk. WCGO, Evanston, Chicago.
Welcome.
I can't hear you either.
Here we go. Welcome back to the Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Malecki. See, that's what we're gonna tweak that this week. We're gonna make sure that works. And that introduction, "Fool for the City," is kind of an homage to you, Tom Tresser, because first of all, it's from our formative years, little foghat, and it's also because you are kind of a fool for the city. You, in a good way, you fight for the city. I called you on my blog a civic warrior, and
thank you.
And I'm sure that to a lot of people, you're a civic pain in the derriere. All right. I bet you've had more than one person look kind of pull you aside and say, "If you ever say that again."
Well, first of all, thanks a lot for bringing me on your air. Yeah, I think I heard you in the before saying that we've known each other for 35 years. Oh my God, I used to have hair. Yeah. For those of you in your viewing pleasure, you can see.
I still have mine. I don't know why. I have no idea why.
Quite distinguished, I might say. But yes, we were actors back in the dim early days.
Oh my goodness. Tom came to my theater company, the Commons Theater, and auditioned, and obviously was good because he got cast in a play that we did. We were, for those of you listening on Facebook live stream, during the commercial break, we were doing a little Shakespeare here. But we did a play called Dashiell Hamlet, right, the classic mystery. And it was basically, I was one of the four authors, Kathleen Thompson, Paul H. Thompson, and Mike Nussbaum, who directed it and is still a director in Chicago. We wrote this play, and we based the Hamlet story in film noir, L.A.
Yeah.
I
love the clothes.
Just the clothes were the best. The costumes were amazing, yeah. And it takes place in L.A. in a film studio right after the war. Mm-hmm. And I thought the piece was brilliant. It never went anywhere.
But I got to get blown away by the Horatio character, I think it was,
who was the detective.
Yeah, right. And he was smoking a cigarette under the lamplight. It was so noir. And every night I got blown away by a 45. Went through the railing of the stairway. It was magnificent.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. You were very good in the role. You were kind of a lizardy character.
That's right. I was channeling my inner lizard. But those were the days.
But what's so interesting, when I look at your biography, I didn't realize that at that time you were already engaged in civic activity.
Right. Well, it's funny because, I was starting, as an actor, then a theater manager. Then I became a theater activist as the far right attacked the arts in 1990. And
But wait a second, weren't you doing something in 1972?
Well, my first voter registration campaign was in college. Yeah. In the 1970s.
So you had already begun to do this kind of thing. So you were setting the stage, no pun intended, for what you were going to do
exactly
as the 80s ended.
Yeah,
right?
I even in high school I was doing civics. But seriously, though, you do voter registration and you do other things, volunteer work. But my attention really turned to American civics after a good career in the arts and producing, when the far right started attacking the National Endowment for the Arts in 1991. The so-called culture wars, which we lost. But I ran around the country.
Now, why do you say that?
Well, because they attacked the arts and built their own musculature. So the far-right organizations like the Christian Coalition and the Focus on the Family and many others raised tens of millions of dollars and activated their base fighting the arts.
So why is it that the fans of the arts and friends of the arts can't become musculature as well?
That's the question I've been asking, Mike, at every level for 30 years. Telling our colleagues, not just in the arts, but let's call them the nonprofit world, the do-good world, the folks that are trying to make a difference in this world, across health, environment, women's issues, every kind of person that's trying to do good for the larger society, usually in some kind of nonprofit setting. And I've been asking them this very question. We need to put our people in office and have them govern according to their values, which is about service, repairing, thinking holistically, et cetera. Those are some of the values that I think we share. And that's been my argument to my colleagues below these many decades.
Well, yeah, and you need to take that information and become strong with it and say, no, what we're doing here is good and healthy for our society.
Yeah, and I use the environmental movement as my example. So I would say to people in the arts or in the nonprofit world, look at our colleagues in the environment. When was the first time you heard the word ecology? So think about that.
Marvin Gaye.
Well, for me, it was a class in college in 1970, and the professor was speaking about this word, and it sounded like it was caught in your throat. Ecology. What does it mean? And he's like saying, "Well, I'm trying to explain. It's a network. So when you piss in the ocean, the polar bear coughs. We're related. So I didn't understand. So you have to come upon a time when
we say pee in the ocean here on the show.
That's pardon me. But the idea that we're connected, that was a new concept for me. And you may remember the famous image of the Earth hanging in space from Apollo 8.
Right.
That was on the cover of Whole Earth catalog. So there was this idea that we are one place. This is one planet. There is no away. Like I said, we're going to throw it away. There is no away.
Which we're a big fan of on this show.
I bet you
are.
Of
because and I've been saying that for a long time, that we still have not gotten that into people's heads.
Yeah.
They still think that they can take anything they have and throw it in their garbage can.
And it goes away.
I don't see it any longer.
That's right.
It's gone away.
It's gone.
Yeah.
So, but I'm just saying that moment for me, and for America is like learning, okay, there is an environment. And I'd say after 40 years, you have the Environmental Defense Fund, the Sierra Club, so many instruments of policy and power. And there's a thought that even if you were walking with your daughter and you threw a piece of paper on the ground, the daughter would say, "Daddy, what are you doing?" There's a consciousness, but it was learned, taught, and fought for.
I can't tell you how many times I'm driving behind somebody and I'm stopped at a light and they throw something out the car window. I want to get out, pick it up and say, "I think you lost this," but you never know what bad thing is going. You can't do that. But it occurs to me.
Yeah. So I would just say generally our colleagues who are fighting for nature and the environment have done a great job. We're not done yet by any means, but I feel like that's a model. And that's what I was talking to my friends in the arts in the nonprofit world to say, look, if we have values too, that should be expressed. So when you want to build something now, you just can't build any old darn thing any old which way. You have to file environmental impact statements. And there's a consciousness that says capitalism should be reined in by the greater good. So you can't just build what you want by the swamp or the marsh or the glen and so forth, because you have to take that into consideration. And so your ownership of that piece of property is mitigated by the larger environment in which you live. So that's not a new thing anymore.
And the thing it takes, as you've learned over the years, Tom, it takes research, a lot of hard work, FOIAs, just the kinds of things that suck up time, suck up energy. When you're fighting against these elements, they're working hard too. They're working hard to steal your money and to corrupt politics. So they're working hard, and they've been doing it for a long time. And people say, well, why can they get away with it? Well, it's because the other people don't sit and work as hard as they are working to corrupt society.
Well, that's why we created the Civic Lab. The Civic Lab is
nice segue.
is an instrument for progressive. It's a do tank. It's a do tank to advance civic engagement and social justice in the way that you're speaking of. So, we have accelerators and labs and all sorts of things for business and technology. Incubators, things of that nature. Social justice needs that same help, and that's what I've been devoting my career to these last few years. But to go back to Michael's original question about do people say my name and spit? Well, I'd like to think that some people do.
It's a badge of honor, isn't it?
It is. I mean, there's sort of I think I'm sort of radioactive actually now in Chicago, and it may have to do with the fact
one of the reasons is you don't hold back. And I've seen you over the years is that you just speak your mind and you say you deal with it, okay?
Well, I guess so, and for better or worse, and I speak, as you point out, with research. So the positions that I've taken over the years come from deep research and pursuing the facts wherever they may be. And that was why we opposed the Olympics, for example. I don't know if you want to talk about that, but even before that,
well, we can get into that a little bit. I want to talk about the Olympics. I want to talk about the Obama Presidential Center.
Oh, sure.
I want to talk about Lincoln Yards.
Right.
These are like three.
Yeah.
They're all of a piece. You could add to that the Lucas Museum on the lake, which fortunately was defeated.
Yeah.
And they're all of a piece because they're all about taking our resources that we fought and people fought and died for over the years in Chicago.
Right.
And giving them away to the rich and powerful.
Yep.
And we can't have that. I mean, this is why people like you step up.
Well, I call myself, guys, a public defender, but it's not like you think about in the courts, And when I speak in public, and which I do quite a bit, I always introduce myself by saying, "Hi, I'm Tom Tresser, a civic educator and public defender." And people go, oh, I know what you mean.
I like civic warrior myself.
Oh, I'll go with that. I'm going to make a T-shirt, brother.
Okay.
But the idea of that the public needs to be explained and defended and expanded is a thing, because we're being privatized and monetized out the yin-yang. So that which is public, stuff that we all own together.
The commons.
The commons. So it's like we no one owns the air, no one owns the water in that sense. So we share it. We must steward it for the future, right? So when somebody tries to buy that, and then monetize it, that makes me crazy, And so stuff that's public.
Well, especially when you look at the city of Chicago and its history in protecting the lakefront.
Yeah.
This has been a big deal. I mean, if I had my way, we would raise Lake Point Tower right now, today, all right? And because it's on that park area.
Yeah.
But that ship sailed a long time ago. But there are other places we can still protect, and it really angers me and frustrates me when people say, "Well, you saved, you kicked Lucas out." They call it the group Friends of the Parking Lot because you saved the Bears parking lot. No, it's not. It's not that. The parking lot shouldn't be there either. Right. Okay, but as long as it's just a parking lot, there's an opportunity to do something with it good.
Yeah. So your Chicago rightly is well known and deserves fame for protecting its lakefront, like other cities have not. You go down to Milwaukee, other cities, the development comes right to the waterfront. And so the question about the value of public. So if it has the word public in front of it, I love it. So it's at public schools. I'm a product of public schools of New York City. Public libraries. I didn't have a lot of money when I was growing up, so I was in the library all the time. Public parks. We love our parks.
Libraries are still wonderful. And one of the great things about libraries is that you can get internet there, which seems, counterintuitive somehow, but it's a place where you can get knowledge and access to knowledge. And that's why libraries are still so valuable.
Well, the history of the American Republic, the American way of life, if you will, the fundamentals of our democracy and our economy are so tightly twined with the word public. You can't separate them. And so a great public means a great city and a great country, a great economy, a great democracy, and it's morally correct on so many ways. I could go to church on this one, right? So that's why when someone comes to grab your public stuff, it makes me crazy. I also don't like bullies. So we got people who are privatizers and we got bullies working together here in Chicago. And that's part of what has motivated my public work going back to
So that's Tom Tresser. By the way, I'm going to hold up the book. You should get a copy of this. It's called Chicago is Not Broke. And it explains very clearly throughout the book. And I love the fact that you've got all these different citizens and some of them are iconic. And
Yeah.
like Dick Simpson writes in here, and other people who have fought for rights in Chicago, and they explain very clearly where your money is going and why it's not going into the public good, but it's going somewhere else, which is usually the pockets of politicians and other connected people. And that will explain. And it's not very long.
Right.
It's a short read. And you will learn a lot. And how can people get a hold of this book?
Well, they just go to wearenotbroke.org, wearenotbroke.org, and it's all of $15 plus tax and shipping. And it's $5 billion, guys, of progressive, sustainable revenue solutions for our great city.
All right. We'll get back to Tom Tresser, but it's a new year and a new era. For the Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Malecki, we are so pleased to welcome Bartlett Tree Experts as the primary sponsor of this show as we enter our third year on 1590 WCGO and our expansion into the rest of the nation on the Gab Radio Network. Now, Bartlett is the largest residential tree care firm in the world. They have 9 offices in the Midwest, including 4 in the Chicago area. Their work is backed by the Bartlett Research Laboratories in Charlotte, North Carolina, where PhD scientists research the best tree care science to bring to their clients. Over the weeks, we'll tell you more about those techniques. We'll invite arborists on the show to answer your tree care questions, like Skeet, who works for Bartlett. He'll be back. I know he's going to be back. And we'll give you tips that fit the season and your tree care needs. Meanwhile, whether it's for a tree at your home or your business, give Bartlett a call for a free tree care estimate. Why? Because every tree needs a champion. Go to bartlett.com. It's the Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Malecki. Tom Tresser is here. More when we return. See, every song has a theme here. This one, of course, is Elton John's Burn Down the Mission. And I have a feeling that sometimes that's kind of what you know, and he says in the song, you got to burn down the mission if we're going to stay alive. And sometimes you have to take on the institutions. And that's what Tom Tresser has done. And again, pick up a copy of his book, Chicago is Not Broke. It's been out for several years. It's been updated. And again, you want to get a little insight into what's going on in the vastness of the corruption in this city. It's mind-blowing, isn't it?
Well, we are trying at the Civic Lab, at civiclab.us, to expand our civic imaginations, okay? We want to move, and I think this is consistent with your show, Mike, and some of the things I know about your work. We want to move from a frame of scarcity to one of abundance. We're not going to be able to do much in this world if we keep saying we have no money, we have no opportunities, and our imaginations are limited.
Change the mindset.
Change the frame, change the narrative. And the frame in Chicago is one of, we ain't got for you. We got plenty for the mayor. There's no problem with his friends and allies and investors. But when it comes to most of the people and most of the neighborhoods, I'm sorry, our cupboard is bare. And we reject that frame. And we prove it in this book, Chicago is Not Broke, Funding the City We Deserve.
Have you sent copies to all the mayoral candidates?
Well, most of them have them. The League of Women Voters purchased a copy for every alderman and for the mayor. Now, we've been doing public meetings. We come to your community, like we make civic house calls. We've done 65 public meetings on the book since the 2 years it was out. The mayor has had no public meetings on his budget for 3 years. So he's crammed about $2 billion worth of regressive taxes down our throats, the red light cameras, or we call them the scameras.
Oh, I like that.
The scameras, yeah. And, soda pop taxes, all regressive, the wrong way to raise money for a city. And we've done 65 public meetings to try to talk about the ideas in the book.
Let's get to some of those ideas. Well, let's get to some of the specifics, because one of the reasons I wanted to have you on is obviously I want people to learn in general, but we got to get to specifics. You mentioned, and we'll just quickly throw it out there, the Olympics. And I was on your team with that. It's like, this is crazy. We will spend billions of dollars on this, and who's going to see anything from it? and it got defeated, and it really didn't even have anything to do with the way it was set up. I think Richie Daley got played by the Olympic Committee. I don't know, but
well, for your listeners, we have to take you to the Wayback Machine to 2008, when it was all the Olympics all the time. So we have to remember that Mayor Daley spent the last 2 years of his reign completely trying to prosecute the Olympic bid. And people say he abandoned his post and he was fixated on bringing the Olympics here. He said in public that we have no ideas, we have nothing up our sleeve civically if we don't get the games. So in other words, we don't get the games, everyone stay home. There's no jobs. We have no clue. And it would have cost probably around $20 billion, we reckon. And
it was commandeered a lot of lakefront property.
Oh, it was privatized the city for 7 years.
Yeah.
They would have destroyed Washington Park, a historically famous Olmsted design park, very significant to the African-American community, completely destroyed. The whole area would have been militarized. So if we think it's police violence in African-American communities are bad now, imagine patrolled with machine guns by the Army and paramilitary. That's what comes with the Olympics. So it's environmentally disastrous, financially ruinous, and morally poisonous. But aside from that, the Olympics are great.
No problem.
No problem. Bring them.
Okay, so that's done. We know that the Lucas Museum on the lakefront got defeated. I was jumping for joy when that happened, and it had a lot to do with people like you, but also Friends of the Parks, who did the lawsuit, and they were trashed for that, and continue to be trashed for that. I think what they're doing, and that takes us to the Obama Library, which we have talked many times in this show about. We've had Juanita Irizarry on the show several times to talk about that whole thing, and I view it's personal, and she won't say this, and because she's smart, she's very political, but I'm the radio host, so I get to be a loose cannon. It's a land grab.
It's a land grab.
Yeah,
that's all it is.
It is. It's a land grab of a beautiful park. Why, we have all this land in the south side of Chicago that could be redeveloped and turned into something wonderful, but no, you got to take something that's already special and build a toaster on it. I call it the toaster by the lake because that's what the design looks like.
Well, the University of Chicago is prosecuting this project, and they owned hundreds of properties all around there, and they are the bastion of the free market, the temple of the free market. The market can do no wrong, except why go to the market if they can take your stuff for free? So the lesson that they're teaching us is, never mind the market. If I can grab your public stuff and use it for my profit, that's the better way. So it's a land grab, and we formed something called Protect Our Parks in 2008 to fight the Latin School when they were grabbing parts of Lincoln Park.
I remember that.
For a soccer field. Now, the soccer field was built, but we sued in court, and we tore up the contract between the Latin School and the Park District, which would have made that park, that little soccer facility, exclusive to the Latin School for 90% of the year. That's a taking. I mean, imagine, in New York City, putting like a roller coaster in the middle of the sheep meadow in Central Park. I mean, that would cause riots. But in Chicago, it was like, whatever, it's a done deal, shrug shoulders. Well, we fought it and sued, had no allies at all, but we won. And Protect Our Parks is the group that's now suing.
I love the story of that you tell of bringing like your 2 or 3 lawyers into court, and the city had their lawyers like
13 lawyers, man.
lined up, ready to go.
It was like,
and they lost the case.
They lost the case. We had the law on our side. We were fighting for the Lakefront Protection Ordinance, which you mentioned earlier. That's a sacred thing. And their argument was, well, we, the city of Chicago, are the arbiters of the Lakefront Protection Ordinance, and we have investigated ourselves, and we are fine with ourselves. That's kind of how they roll. So now, look, Ed Burke could be going to the pokey, and after 50 years, this city is so opaque, so corrupt. Even today, they say the machine is a thing of the past. It isn't.
No.
And we saw.
Well, okay. The embodiment of that is, and I'll probably get myself in trouble for this, is Toni Preckwinkle.
Well, I ran against her in 2010. I was the Green Party candidate.
Yeah.
People forget that was how great my campaign was. But I was the Green Party candidate for Cook County Board President against
and
her.
I guess I better be careful because we already know one radio host got yanked off the air a week ago.
Be careful
for criticizing mayors and mayoral candidates, and that's Ben Jarofsky, who was at WCPT and is no longer there.
Be careful, brother.
I love the people here at CGO. as long as I'm not slanderous.
Yeah.
They're fine.
Well, I try to speak truth, but as you say at the top of the show, it tends to be a little acidic. But I called Toni Preckwinkle to her face, the new face of the Democratic machine in 2010, in the Chicago Tribune editorial board. And I asked her at that time to renounce her support of Joe Barrios, who was running for assessor. And she said, no, he is a champion for women in office. And I had a laugh. I said, Alderman Preckwinkle, you mean he put his daughter, Toni, in office? That's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So she said, no, I'm a loyalist to the party, and he's the chairman of my party. And she said that many times in public, and she said it right up to the time Barrios lost. So I'm sorry, she's the face of the Democratic machine, and she's just going to have to live with it.
And she may be the next mayor. So
and she may be.
Yeah. So we've gone through, and I don't want to rehash the Obama library, except to say that they could have done it better. They could have had more public. And they're sort of beeping and backtracking now. When they did this presentation and suddenly there was all this hue and outcry about why you're taking away a park, and then there were a bunch of meetings that started happening, and there's still people unhappy with it. And the thing that really frustrates me, and I read an article that was written 2 days ago or 3 days ago about the golf course that's supposed to happen, the Tiger Woods. And you know what it was? It was some fluff piece written in Chicago about, hey, isn't this great? Tiger Woods is designing a golf course. And there was no mention about the land grab and the bird sanctuary that was going to be impacted and all, and the fact that it probably priced the average Chicago citizen out of that golf course.
The cost is going to go up by 1,000%.
I know. I play golf. I like golf. Okay, I cannot afford to golf at most places.
No, you won't be able to go there.
I won't be able to golf in the city of Chicago.
So it's a kind of a city beautiful gentrification master plan that's been rolling in the city for at least 100 years, since the Burnham Plan in 1909. So the idea of building this thing in public land is offensive. They could have put it so many different places and have done such a boon to the community. They should have repurposed a high school and a community college to train people to be docents and curators, and actually people that would work and create the content for the center.
And the community involvement, the community agreement that they just refuse.
They refuse to sign it. They refuse to sign it. And Obama used to be an organizer.
So he understands it, and the reason
he would have been he would have been fighting for a community benefits agreement.
Don't get me wrong here. I like Obama. I like the Obamas. I think he was a great president.
This has nothing to do with that.
It really has nothing to do with it. It has to do with taking our parkland away from us in Chicago, when you could have easily, because you're a multimillionaire and you've got all the resources in the world behind you, you could have picked someplace else.
The people on his board are the wealthiest in America. So he's got billionaires at his beck and call. They could have bought anything they wanted. They could have built anything they wanted. So it's a land grab, and we'll have to leave it at that.
All right. So we moved from Tiger Woods and Obama on the South Side, and we got 2 minutes, but when we're going to finish this. We're going to the end of the hour because this is what's happening right now. Even more. This is going to affect the city of Chicago even more than the Obama Library, and that is Lincoln Yards.
Creating new parkland.
We want to create new parkland. It doesn't look like it's going to happen particularly. We've had Wagasback on the show. We've had Alderman Michelle Smith. They're in the neighboring wards. We've had Brian Hopkins on the show, and I talked to him about it. And there have been meetings now, and we're going to pass a new TIF district
over my dead body.
Well, I know, and I want to talk briefly about TIFs, and that's kind of the reason I brought up Ben Jarofsky, because he's been the TIF guy. You and Ben have been like this tag team about TIFs in the city of Chicago and the destructive nature. Ironically, TIFs started by Harold Washington.
True story.
And so you look at that and you go, how did this all go wrong? But that's money that used to go to our schools and go to our public libraries and go to our parks.
$9 billion taken off the table since TIFs were created.
In the city of
TIFs,
Chicago.
Real quick, a TIF is?
It's a district created by the city that sucks property taxes in the name of development, but it's really a slush fund.
Well, that's what it's turned into. There you go. Tom Tresser calling it as he sees it. You can go to civiclab.us.
Yes, sir.
And he's holding the book. And what he told me earlier is that you market like crazy when you don't have a big budget, and that's the way it works. So keep holding the book up. It's the Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Malecki. We'll talk about Lincoln Yards when we come back. Welcome back to the Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Malecki. We have Tom Tresser here in the studio with us, and we had to play a little blues since we're talking about Chicago. And so we've been talking TIFs, we've been talking land grabs in the city of Chicago. And again, like I say, the reason I got him here today, a few months ago, we ran into each other, and I said, I'd love to have you on the show, but I'd like to focus on open spaces and environmental matters. And and Tom said, bring it on. I talk about that stuff all the time. So here we are. And the latest is this thing called Lincoln Yards, which is basically the North Branch industrial corridor where they tore down some factories and they've had steel production there, and that's going to go away. And the idea is to transform the city. However, if you talk to people like Alderman Scott Wagasback, he's terrified of what's going to happen there, because for one thing, it's going to affect his ward greatly. They're going to plop down basically a city within a city.
City within a city.
A city. It's like taking the city of Oak Park and dropping it in to the middle of Chicago, except without the open space and without the trees.
Right.
All right.
So, yeah, we're talking about maybe 10,000 workers, 5,000 to 7,000 people living there. We can't figure out where these people are coming from, where the jobs are coming from. We believe that this was ginned up in anticipation of Amazon HQ2, but we're not getting that. That's going to New York. So,
which is another victory for the city of Chicago, if you ask me.
Right. Well, again, on one sense, I'm a free market capitalist, libertarian, radical progressive, in the sense of, you want to build something, don't use my public money.
Right. I don't want to give you $2.5 billion for you to because you're going to make $1 billion anyway on this.
Bezos is the world's richest man. Yeah. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think he's worth like $90 billion. No. So we're not coming. That's not coming here. So what is going on with this Lincoln Yards? It's bloated beyond understanding. They're talking about 40-story towers right there along the North.
They were going to be 70-story towers, and now they've scaled it back. Which I wonder if that was the plan all along.
It's always the plan. These guys are schooled. They've been around the block many times. They know that when they propose these giant developments, they know that we demand public meetings. So they bloat it up way beyond understanding, and then they have a couple of meetings. They go, you see, we're listening to you. We dropped it from 70 towers to it's only 40 towers, which is what we wanted in the first place.
Yeah.
So, all right, this thing is way bloated beyond understanding. It's going to cause massive congestion and insanity all around that north part of Chicago. So if you're talking about Sedgwick, Armitage, that's where we are.
Let's put it this way. It's already congested. Now, part of the reason is because the bridges over the North Branch of the Chicago River.
There's only a few places where you can go across the river.
Yes, they're inadequate. So they're going to add a few more, but they're also going to add, I don't know, 5,000, 10,000, how many? 50,000 people, and at any given time, because people coming into work, who knows what the number will be.
And a metro station and everything else.
All the things that they're demanding is going to has caused them to create a TIF to support all this, which is going to suck $1.3 billion off the table to support this development. And what we're trying to say is, look, Chicago's history is where developers run the show. It's the tail wagging the dog. Instead of having a massive overarching plan for economic justice, environmental sanity, parity, where everybody's making good, across the city, it's the developers that have driven the show since 1909. So what they want, they get, and then we have to respond. So they want to build a cockamamie project on the river, then we have to run to their aid with this TIF to help them out. So they're saying,
and let's back up for just a second. So basically, they're saying we can't possibly build this because we don't have enough. We're big, rich, fancy developers, but we don't really have enough money. Even though we're going to make a lot of money on this, we don't have enough money to do it. So we need to divert your tax dollars in this TIF, and we will divert them for 23 years,
That's right.
which means that money will not go to the schools and the parks and the public libraries for 23 years, while we pump it into the buildings that we're going to put up. And they say, and the improvements, but we're going to also improve the area.
Right. Well, that's essentially their argument. And remember, a TIF is supposed to be for blighted areas. So we have to dial the clock back to understand that why did Harold Washington bring this tool to Chicago? He was trying to figure out a way to get the development out of the loop and out of the central, sort of the 5 wards, that's the super loop, into the other 45 wards, communities of color and communities
share it around the whole city.
Share the wealth. And that's what he was trying to do. But when he passed away, Richard Daley II came in, and someone in his shop discovered this TIF thing is the goose that lays the golden civic egg. And there's been a 45-degree angle straight uptick to today, where we have 145 active TIFs across the city. About 30% of the land of the city is in a TIF. No other city in America has this kind of burden. And last year, they sucked $493 million, these TIFs, off the table. And as you say, the losers are the other units of government that rely on property taxes.
Mainly the public schools.
Yeah, public
56% should be going to, that's been sucked out from the TIFs.
Are there any checks and balances on where this money actually is going?
Not if you can check and balance the mayor. And the last time I checked, we have a rubber stamp city council that in its entire history of record keeping has never gainsaid the mayor.
So they want this TIF. How big? How many million or billion?
It'll suck 1.3 billion.
1.3 billion. All right. So they want this TIF, and now we're negotiating. All right. First of all, we're going to lose all that money, which is going to go into that neighborhood. The Friends of the North Branch Park and Nature Preserve say we need a contiguous park along that branch of the Chicago River because we need some darn open space in the city of Chicago.
Right.
And they've been fighting that. The developers have been fighting it like crazy. They rolled out this thing. We were at the meeting on the 29th of November. I was at the meeting on the 14th as well. And I know you've been a lot more meetings, Tom. And they show you these grand schemes, including the stadium, a soccer stadium, which, frankly, I don't understand why the soccer stadium's there at all, Tom.
Well, it's co-owned by the Ricketts family. So they're going to figure out a way to make money from the minor league soccer. Next to that is an indoor arena, maybe 10,000 seats, to be owned by Live Nation. And we have to remember the mayor's brother, Ari Emanuel, is on the board of Live Nation, so the fix is in. Our club owners, our small club owners like Empty Bottle and Subterranean and Martyrs and places like that produce live music are up in arms. They're afraid that their livelihoods will be ruined by these venues, and they have a right to be fair.
So when Alderman Wagasback, we got 2 minutes here, so we're going to wrap this up. We got when Alderman Wagasback and Michelle Smith were on the show last April, they said we want a 24-acre park.
Yeah.
And so in their benevolence, the developers come back at the November 29th meeting and say, hey, we'll give you 20 acres. And I'm like, we can't even get the 24 acres that we're asking for this.
Well, you got to remember when Burnham did his plan so many years ago, he called for 10 acres of open land per 1,000 residents. And according to the National Trust for Public Land, we're at 4.4. So we're not even halfway there.
Yeah. So here we are. This is going to be fought one of the things that needs to happen before we go is all the mayoral candidates need to take a stand on Lincoln Yards.
Yes, that's
true. They
true.
need to say what they believe in terms of Lincoln Yards and open space. This could have been an opportunity for us to set a precedent for the world. This is how you develop a downtown area. Instead, it's the same old.
Yeah.
And it's nonsense.
Yeah. No new TIFs. Hashtag no new TIFs. And no deal without a park.
No deal without a park. Tom Tresser, thank you very much. Go to civiclab.us. If folks want a copy of the book, they go to
wearenotbroke.org.
You're going to be back. We're going to be discussing this for a long, well, maybe not. It might get rushed through, and don't be surprised if that happens.
We'll still be discussing it.
Thanks to Tom Tresser. Thanks to David Perling. Thanks to Randall and Ellie. And even Andrew. Okay, until next time, go green or
go home.
Stadler?
What?
Is that it?
Yes, it's over. How'd you like it?
I don't know. I slept through the whole thing.
Well, you didn't miss much.